Yesterday, I released a 20-minute video about how I write B2B case studies that my clients use to convert six-figure opportunities. But that's too long for a short vertical video. So if you want to go check that out, go to edifycontent.com/blog or check out the Edify Content YouTube channel to watch the full thing. Today, instead, we're going to talk about how to get and use quotes in case studies, including an industry secret you probably don't know about. Now, on the one hand, quotes are one of the strongest storytelling tactics, but on the other, too many quotes and your case study feels like an interview. You want quotes to not only substantiate what your case study says, but also to talk up your product. Now, we need to remember that a case study isn't objective journalism. It has journalistic elements, but it's biased and a pretty loaded piece of content. I mean, ultimately, it's a sales and marketing tool that, when written well, feels nothing like a sales and marketing tool, but it's still a sales and marketing tool. A good quote is a long-term marketing asset that can show up as a social media graphic, in a white paper or an ebook, or in a video played at a conference. Anywhere a marketer or a salesperson sees fit, a quote can be used. So, quotes are important. Identifying and writing good quotes is like producing marketing assets that can be used for years, that even if the case study is outdated, a good quote can be used forever. All right, so I want to review 3 approaches I take to case study quotes. One of them is a secret because it's a little controversial. All right, number 1, use quotes sparingly and make them fiery hot. Now, sometimes clients only want 1 or 2 customer quotes in a case study. Sometimes it's just best to only have 1 or 2 quotes in the case study. In those situations, I look for the juiciest quotes in the interview transcript as source material. Now, since we're not being exactly journalistic, I'll take 2 sentences that were kind of said far apart and I'll just combine them, even if they're not, in the same paragraph or the same question being answered. For example, if an interviewee says early in the interview that a product is a game changer for a specific project, and at the end of the interview they might say that they'd absolutely recommend the product, then I will write a quote that's something like, "I'd absolutely recommend this product. For our project XYZ, it was a total game changer." Same interview, same person, different threads of ideas, and that's okay. If you only have 1 or 2 chances to use quotes, there's absolutely nothing wrong with finding the most compelling parts of an interview and stitching words together. But don't make it so it's like, "This product is a game changer," that, like, if you're stealing words from all over the place, that's not okay. I know a quote is fiery hot when it's headline worthy or it gets my clients salivating to use it. So, quotes need to be short, sweet, opinionated, and impactful, especially if you only get to use 1 or 2 in a case study. All right, my second strategy for quotes, use them liberally, but make sure they're never dull. So for longer case studies, like over 1,200 words, or interview-style case studies, you'll be using a lot of directly quoted material. But you need to put on your editorial hat in these situations, because most case study interviewees aren't people who do a ton of interviews, especially public ones. So they might ramble on a bit, or they might overshare. And just because an interviewee says something doesn't mean you need to use it. In fact, I generally take the opposite approach and identify all the least boring segments of text that I can actually use. And then I'll continue editing that text to minimize any extra words and anything that doesn't add to the story. It's a lot of work, but you don't want to waste the reader's time. The interviewee wasn't sitting in the hot seat as an expert storyteller or a salesperson for your product. They are a subject matter expert using your product to do their job. So when I'm using a lot of quotes in a case study, maybe to show an interview style case study or something like that, I will liberally edit the interview content so it succinctly answers a question or tells a story. Nobody is going to go back to your source footage and audit your case study. So this isn't like a high-risk undertaking. Your reputation is not at stake. It's my job as a writer to present the most compelling story possible, using someone else's words as much as I can. In other words, Follow good writing and editorial practices. Never be boring. Never let your interviewee and their company look bad. And use their words to tell the story you need an audience to hear. All right, here's the third tactic, which is the secret one. Make up quotes. Of course, I don't mean like just fabricate them out of thin air, but sometimes it's not too far from that. I have synthesized many, many quotes from interviewees using as much of their sentiment as I use their language. Sometimes my interviews just don't get any good quotes, which is fine because I'm after the story first and foremost. But when I need a good quote, I'll do my best to write one that sounds like the person said it. I'm a ghostwriter, so I know how to do this. I will tell my clients this is a synthesized quote, and they need to get approvals from the interviewee during that person's review. But I have never had a rejection of a synthesized quote, usually because the interviewee doesn't remember what he or she said in a 45 to 60-minute interview. And if it sounds enough like them, like something they would say, they will believe that they said it. I've never had anybody come back and say, sorry, I didn't say those words directly, you can't use that quote. And we are always giving them the chance to say no to using that quote. And if they don't say no, it's fair game. So those are my 3 strategies for quotes in case studies. Number 1, the fewer the quotes, the more impactful they need to be. Number 2, the more you quote, the more you have to edit. And number 3, you can make up quotes as long as you get them approved. And if you need a 4th strategy, never be afraid to ask the interviewee for a direct quote. You can do a follow-up email, or you can, in the interview, just say, here is a quote prompt. Can you just say this, or say something like this? Or would you agree with this? And if so, can you rephrase it in your own words? Nobody will complain. They might say, no, I don't want to do that, or do you have any other prompts? But don't expect a lot of pushback. So next time you read a case study, take a look at the quotes, see if you can identify the strategy being used and whether it was completely made up.